And okay, we are live on the MLB Talk 101. What's up, guys? Brian Danoff here, joined alongside Gershon Abinowitz, as we have a very special guest here with us tonight. For 8 years now, New Yorkers have seen him on their television screens each summer on SNY as a field reporter for the New York Mets. And now the rest of the country is getting to know him as he's also started calling games for the NFL on Fox. But, of course, we are a baseball network here, and we're going to talk about exactly that, as we'd like to welcome Kevin Burkhardt to our show tonight. Kevin, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this evening, and how's Port St. Lucie treating you?
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's good. It's a lot warmer than it is back home, so I'm making everybody jealous back in New York. So a little sunshine, a little baseball. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it's great to have you on the show, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Sure.
All right, so we have a bunch of questions to ask you. Of course, you've had a very interesting career, had a very interesting path to the jobs you now have, of course. And, you know, you grew up as a Mets fan in Bloomfield, New Jersey, you know, during their peak under Davey Johnson. And in junior high school, you idolized Mets play-by-play man Gary Cohen. You played the RBI baseball on Nintendo, announcing the games. And, you know, so when did you come to the realization that, you know, you wanted to do broadcasting for a living? And, you know, how surreal is it that you actually ended up working with the same exact guy you grew up watching?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I really thought about it in high school. You know, I mean, when I was, I don't know, maybe a junior in high school, something that kind of crossed my mind. As you said, I used to announce Nintendo games back in the day with my friends as fun. And it's something that, you know, really at that point kind of caught my eye. And, you know, once I was looking at colleges, I was specifically looking for colleges that had good radio and television programs because I really wanted to pursue it. So, yeah, and then obviously, you know, I listened to Gary and Bob Murphy all the time. So now getting a chance to actually be with them and be with Gary, that is, and you know, work with him, work with Keith and Ronnie, it's incredible. You know, I couldn't have imagined it when I was a kid. And 8 years later, it's still pretty awesome to, you know, walk into Citi Field, and that's my office essentially. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you know, your birthday is March 2nd, so that's coming up in a few days. Early happy birthday to you. And, you know, also, of course, you graduated from William Patterson University in 1997. And one of our Twitter followers actually is, I think, still attending the university. And, you know, he asked, you know, how did our alma mater, in a sense, you know, prepare you for your broadcasting career?
Well, I did a lot. I mean, the biggest thing is that we had a TV production group there that we did all sports. So we did baseball, basketball, football, softball, field hockey, you name it. And it was a great experience. You know, it was just like real. I mean, I could look back now and say it was just like the real thing. We had a truck, and everyone did their part: engineers, production people, directors, camera people. I was one of the announcers, obviously, and we had some great mentors that were at the school that helped us really produce those shows. It was just a great experience. And I had some really good classes from people that, if they weren't teachers there for a long time, they were part-time teachers, but also, you know, producers or people that worked in New York in television. So you're getting a first-hand account from people that work in the industry. I don't think you could get a better feel for it than that. So, I mean, all in all, William Patterson was great for me. I mean, I talk proudly of it because it's a D3 school, it's a small school, and, you know, I think it just kind of helps people realize, especially younger people, that, you know, you don't have to go to the biggest and baddest school in the country to, you know, get the necessary training. So I take a lot of pride in where I went.
Yeah, and Kevin, after graduation, you ended up working at WGHT in New Jersey, which was a small station. I think that was a station that you once mentioned actually shuts off at night, and it only has a signal on during the day. You covered New Jersey sports. You worked for Time Warner Cable. Your first baseball job was with the New Jersey Jackals, which I believe is an independent team. You had a lot of different memories, a lot of experiences, but by the time you were 30 years old or so, you became disenfranchised with the business because you felt that you were good enough to pursue another opportunity, but it wasn't coming. And you ended up selling used cars for Pine Belt Chevrolet. You still do some promos for them. I saw a couple of them on YouTube. Looking back, how important was that experience for you as you took a step back to reassess your goals?
I think it was very important. I think I got discouraged a little bit because I thought that I was good enough to be in the industry, and I just wasn't getting any breaks. And it allowed me to step back and really just evaluate where I wanted to go next. And it also gave me motivation. Doing that. I was still working semi part-time. I kind of was working a little bit at WCBS, filling in for them, and I started to get the ball rolling a little bit there. But it was motivation too, just to kind of being out of it, and then realizing, what, I don't want to give up yet. I want to go back and really give it my all, and I know I can do this. So it was just, I think it was a good time to take a break, kind of reassess where I was in life, and whether I wanted to keep pursuing it. And I'm glad I did. I think it was a necessary step for me to get where I am today. I really do. It was a motivating factor. It really was.
Yeah, it allowed you just to refocus and think things over, and just reassess your goals a little bit, as you said. And at Pine Belt Chevrolet, as you mentioned, that you began to get calls from WCBS 880, you filled in for different people, and ultimately led to a bit role at Sports Radio 66 WFAN, which, for those who don't know, is the largest sports talk radio station and the first sports talk radio station in the country. How are you able to balance both, having shifts at Pine Belt Chevrolet and then having more radio opportunities? I mean, how are you able to balance both of those?
Well, I had a really good boss who listened to me on the radio and heard me and kind of knew what I was doing, and he thought it was cool. So he just let me out of work when those opportunities came about. I made it up. I worked whenever I could for him. But when there was an opportunity that came up, maybe during the day, or if I had to leave early, he let me go. Understanding what I wanted to do. So I also worked hard for him, and I was one of the better salesmen there, so that helped. But he was really supportive. He heard me a lot. I really thought I was good, and just was very supportive that I was doing that. And he wanted to be a part of it. So I owe him a lot. It kind of helped me pay the bills while I was trying to get back on my feet and get those breaks. And one of the many people along the way that without him, I don't know if I'd be here.
And at WFAN, you filled a number of roles. You were a Jets reporter. You did some overnight shows. You did some 2020 sports updates for Mike and the Mad Dog. You did, as I mentioned, some overnight shows. What did you learn from filling all those roles and from working with Mike and the Mad Dog, Chris Russo, Mike Francesa, the producers there? I mean, that is the top sports radio show in the country.
Just learn to be versatile. I think that so many times people kind of pigeonhole themselves into one thing they do well, and that's great. But I think if you could do 6, 7 things well, then that's a lot better than one thing well, at least in my book. And I think that served me well over the years, trying to learn to do different things, and whether it's reporting or hosting or doing updates or whatever it is. I think that's kind of made me into a well-rounded broadcaster because I've experienced a lot of different things. And then obviously just being around those guys. I mean, their knowledge is incredible. They taught me the value of history and really delving into history, and it was just fun. It was a great experience. I mean, that's the bottom line. You learn so much, you get to experience much, and being on their show is great exposure because you're on their show once and everybody sees you. It's unbelievable the following that they have. So it was just all those things wrapped into one. It was a great stepping stone in my career. It got me noticed, I think, to be honest.
Yeah, and the weird thing was, I actually did not notice you from Mike and the Mad Dog. I remember one night I was listening, it might have been around July 4th in 2004 or 2005. It was after a Yankee game, and you were hosting a show about 10 o'clock or 11, filling in for Steve Summers, talking about the Jets. And I didn't recognize your voice. I listened to a lot of shows on WFAN, and then I hear all of a sudden Kevin Burkhardt here on the fan. And then I did not hear of you for another 3 or 4 years until about 2007 when you started doing the Met games. And I was actually reading the WFAN book by Tim Sullivan about the history of the station, and it mentioned that in 2007, I had no idea about this, you were up for the midday position next to Joe Beningo. You lost out to Evan Roberts. A few months later, you landed the position at SNY as the sideline reporter and doing some fill-in play-by-play for the Mets, the job that you still have today. How did you end up getting the job with the Mets, and how much do you think your career would have changed had you gotten the midday slot at the Fan?
Well, I mean, Tim wrote a great book, but I mean, I never really had a chance to get that midday spot. They loved Evan, and rightfully so. He's so good. But I mean, I guess technically I was in the mix for it, but I knew that I wasn't going to get that job. So it was just the impetus to get me to realize that I had to go on to something else because, at that point, area for growth at WFAN was over. So I looked around. I mean, the Met thing at SNY was totally unexpected. I mean, they were on the air for a year, and Chris Goddard did a great job the first year. He didn't want to do it anymore, and so they needed to fill a role. So I interviewed for it, and really my background being a local guy, knowing a ton about the Mets, they had heard me host shows on the Fan, really helped. And I interviewed for it. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think twice about it, but got a call and said, "Hey, you got the job." So I was pretty floored when that happened, and it changed my life. It really did.
Yeah, and you've been the Mets sideline reporter now for it's going to be your eighth season, I believe, and it's kind of interesting because you got there after 2006, after they got to the NLCS Game 7, and it was a great atmosphere, and I thought the Mets were close to. If they had a few more years of success, they may have been able to gain some more interest. Almost as close to the Yankees, but since you've been there, they've gone through one of the worst stretches in their history. Of course, and you've seen a lot. You've seen a lot. From the firing of Willie Randolph, and of course you've had some great moments as well. David Wright becoming the all-time Mets hit leader, Johan Santana's no-hitter, and this year there seems like there's more optimism than in past years. They signed Curtis Granderson. As a Yankee fan, tough to see him go, but certainly found a nice home across the way in Flushing. Signed Chris Young, signed Bartolo Colon. So and also so what do you think? What impact do you see these guys having this season? I think they certainly bring a different dynamic to the team that they haven't had for a long time.
Well, they got to score. They don't score enough, and that's one of the many problems. They were 11th in the league in runs last year, and they were last in the league in strikeouts, and they don't hit enough home runs to strike out that many times. So that's a problem. So they're trying to get some runs produced here. I like Granderson a lot. I think he's a good fit. Chris Young, they're hoping that he could regain what he was 3 or 4 years ago, because the last 2 years he has not been good. He's been the fourth outfielder on the Diamondbacks in Oakland, but they're hoping that a new change of scenery, giving him the opportunity. He didn't have all the opportunities in the world the last couple of years, and can reinvigorate him. He's a good outfielder as far as defense goes. He does have power at 32 home runs 1 year, but still they're hoping that they can kind of rekindle that. I think that their offense really revolves around a couple guys. Ike Davis at first base, can he regain his form? Ruben Tejada, who was dreadful last year, can he be better? I think he will. And then Travis Darnell, who hit 200 in a limited time last year when he came up, and scouts think he's going to be the real deal and hit. He's got to hit, and they need some of these younger guys to hit. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who they sign, because if you remember, they had Marlon Byrd last year who had 21 home runs before they traded him, and their offense still couldn't score. So that is a big issue with this team, and I don't know if it's resolved. I think time will tell.
Yeah, and last season was really interesting for sure. And you said a lot of young guys came up and played pretty well. Juan Lagares was pretty impressive in the small opportunities he had. Matt Dendecker made some pretty nifty catches, and of course Darno, as you said, certainly proved that he's a capable defensive catcher. And then of course Matt Harvey and Zach Wheeler, and Harvey, of course, started the All-Star game at Citi Field. It was great the way he got off last year. It was amazing, and people were calling every time he pitched. Unofficially they were calling it, oh, it's Harvey Day. It got Mets fans excited, got them to come out to Citi Field and see him pitch every fifth day. But of course, the Mets continue with the kind of stroke of bad luck. He Tommy John surgery, ended his season. He just started throwing this week, in fact, I think, down at Port St. Lucie. Didn't throw off a mound, but was just, made 20 or 30 throws on flat ground. So, it's a devastating loss, there's no doubt about it. I think they're hoping that Bartolo Colon can kind of shore up anything that they might be losing with Harvey this season. But, do you see prospects like maybe Rafael Montero or Noah Syndergaard, being able to come up and maybe help the rotation, if any of these guys start to falter?
Yeah, not now, though. I don't think they're going to go with a kid in the fifth spot right this second. I think that Syndergaard is going to be up. If he plays well in AAA, he'll be up in the summer. He's not going to start with camp.
Right.
Montero's got a shot to break camp with the team. I don't think he's going to, but he's got a shot. And Mejia's got a shot, that's for sure. But, I think they would like to go with a veteran and get the kids a little bit more experience in AAA. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that's how they're rolling right now. So I think even though it's ridiculously early and they haven't played a game yet, Daisuke Matsuzaka is the fifth starter if the season started today.
Yeah, and the Mets also brought in the camp John Ladden, who had a very successful career his first couple of years with the Washington Nationals, so he could also be in the mix. Jeremy Hefner was a non-roster invitee, so anything that happens to any of those guys, they might have an opportunity. And Kevin, despite the loss of Matt Harvey, the Mets have a formidable starting rotation. Zach Wheeler, who we mentioned about, he's had his moments. He still needs to cut down on his walks a little bit, his control. Dylan G, second half of the year last year, was probably the Mets' most consistent starter, especially after Matt Harvey went down. Jonathan Neese is one of their most underrated left-handed pitchers in the National League. And they brought in Bartolo Colon, who had a fantastic season last year in Oakland. The overriding problem, however, for this Met franchise, since 2006 and since you came on as a sideline reporter for the Mets, has been the bullpen. Last year, Bobby Parnell, final 3 months of the season, he missed with a bulging disc in his neck. Mets also signed veterans to give a look to Kyle Farnsworth, Jose Valverde as insurance policies in case Bobby Parnell is not ready. This season, the Mets also intend to incorporate some young arms, Vic Black, who they acquired in the Marlon Byrd trade. We talked about that earlier. And Jeurys Familia, who missed about a significant amount of time last season due to elbow surgery. I think he only pitched about 9 innings last year, or 9 games, something like that. What can we expect from Bobby Parnell and the Met bullpen in 2014?
I have no idea, nor does anybody else. They're hoping that Parnell's healthy. I think he is. I had a talk with him the other day, and he seemed really confident, and I think they're taking it slow, but I really feel like he's going to be okay. And he had a great year. He really did before he got hurt. I thought he was a really good closer, and I wasn't worried about him. I think he did a great job, so I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about everybody else. Because right now there's question marks up and down the board. I think really you look at it, Scott Rice. Again, he had the sports hernia surgery, cut his year short, but he was terrific. He pitched literally every day. He was great, and he was a find. But then you have just a bunch of young kids, unproven. You have a couple of veterans in camp like Valverde and Farnsworth. I know that the Mets like to have those veteran guys on there. I would think right now that Valverde is almost a lock to make the team unless he's just awful this spring. But, there's a lot of balls in play, and I think there's probably going to be a chance for a couple of kids to prove themselves. So I don't think you're going to know until the season gets going in April to see what this bullpen's about.
And bullpens fluctuate each year. Some years the team you think has a great bullpen on paper. The Mets have tried it with free agency. They've tried it through the minor league system. Nothing has really worked. And it led to the 2 collapses in 07 and 08 and continues to this day. And today you were talking about just question marks, and we mentioned about Ike Davis. ESPN New York's Adam Rubin reported early this morning that Ike Davis has been the subject of trade rumors. The Mets have tried trading him. They cannot find any offers. He concealed the oblique injury to avoid another trip to AAA New Orleans. Hit just 205 last year, second consecutive disappointing camping.
He didn't conceal the oblique injury, I don't think, to be honest. I think that was a story that came out today. It is what it is. He was hurt. He played through it. Yeah. A lot of guys play through injuries. I didn't think that was a big story today. The story, unfortunately, turned out that he and the writer from the Post got into a little bit of a verbal tiff. But
because he was questioned about it, and then Ike basically just denied that it happened. He really had a difficult year, and he's facing stiff competition at first base. Lucas Duda, Josh Satin. Even Daniel Murphy could play first base, as we've seen. Do you think that Ike Davis has reached a crossroads in his career with the New York Mets?
Well, I think it's close. He's got to I still think there's a chance he gets traded here, but spring training for him doesn't mean anything. You know what he's capable of, but you also know that the last 2 Aprils have been horrendous for him. So he could hit 400 with 25 home runs in spring training. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he does. He's got to hit that first week of the season and get off to a good start and feel good about getting off to a better start. I still think he's got tremendous potential, and I wouldn't give up on him. It feels like the Mets are close to doing that. I wouldn't. I think they need him, and they need his power numbers to be productive offensively. But we'll see. They're trying to be patient with him. It's tough. He's had a couple really rough years, so I would not be shocked. There's so many ways that this whole story can go, and I really wouldn't be shocked any which one it does.
Yeah, and he has the potential, 30 home run potential, an excellent glove. It just hasn't worked out for whatever reason the last couple of years, especially with runners in scoring position. It seems like he comes up with the bases loaded, just cannot get that big hit. And one of the guys he's competing with, Lucas Duda, it's the same way. And you hear on talk radio people complaining that Duda has trouble driving in runs. So it's going to be interesting to see how first base turns out for the Mets. We talked about Travis d'Arnaud. 2 out of 24 last year when he first came up. He had a shoulder injury, which significantly impacted his hitting, limited him behind the plate. Now his injuries are behind him. He has some big league experience, some service time. Now with a full season behind the plate, how much will that benefit him and the Met pitching staff?
I have no idea. I mean, he's got a hit. I think the one thing that we found out about d'Arnaud is that he came up and he was much better defensively than all the scouts told us he was. I mean, he was really good at framing pitches and being able to call a game. And I'm not worried about him throwing out runners or any of that. But he's got a hit. They made the trade for him to hit. He only had 99 at bats in the majors last year. He hit 200. He only had 1 home run. I can't judge it on that. But make no mistake, the Mets are counting on him. They need 280 and 20 home runs out of Travis d'Arnaud this year. This is not charity. They made that trade for him. And yes, I understand Syndergaard was in the trade. He was a huge part too. But they're counting on d'Arnaud's offense. I think his defense is good and much better than people thought. But quite honestly, they didn't trade for him to get a defensive catcher. They need him and they need his bat.
Yeah, and d'Arnaud. I mean, the Mets have a ton of solid prospects, and it seems like they have a bright future. It really does. And we've seen though with Ike Davis and other prospects in the past that things maybe don't work out the way they wanted to. But everything you're hearing about Syndergaard and what we saw with Harvey last year, and even Juan Lagares and guys like that, the Mets have a really solid future. But looking back real quick, we have to touch on this, of course. The Mets, of course, will wear a commemorative patch for their recently passed, Ralph Kiner, who passed away. He was the last remaining link to their 1962 inaugural season. So, of course, working with SNY, Ralph was still making, trips every now and then to the broadcast booth with Gary, Keith, and Ron, talk some baseball, and it was great to watch. And I remember watching a ton of it over these past few seasons, and I'm sure you got up close and personal with him. So, what did Ralph Kiner teach you about the game, and do you have any fond memories of him as a broadcaster, or even growing up listening to him if you did?
No, all of it. I mean, he was an icon. Growing up as a Mets fan, he was there with Steve Zabriskie and Tim McCarver, and he was great. He was the voice of the Mets. I mean, he was synonymous with the Mets. He was a real good play-by-play guy. He was fun. He was your friend, and then getting a chance to work with him. I mean, it was iconic. Sitting next to a Hall of Famer, this slugger who was a superstar back in the day, and to pick his brain about the game and have him sit next to you and realize that you're in the presence of greatness, it was a real thrill for me to get a chance to work with him. Obviously, it's sad that Ralph passed, but I'm honored the fact that I got to know him and the fact that I got to work with him and be with him. I don't take that for granted one second, and he knows more baseball and probably forgot more baseball than anyone you'll ever come in contact with. So, God rest his soul. He was a great man, and I'm just lucky I had a chance to work with him. Hey, guys, I got to get going, fellas. I'm kind of out of time here.
That's fine. Just thanks again for the time, Kevin, and we really appreciate it. And, we're a growing baseball network, and we're starting out with little connections and little resources, just like you did, and we hope one day to make it as big as you have.
Hey, man, you guys keep doing a good job and keep working, and I'll come on anytime. Good to be with you guys tonight, all right?
Thank you. You too, Kevin. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
All right, take care.
All right. So that was Kevin Burkhardt of SNY, and it was great, and to have him on, and a big guest joining our network. It was a great show, and Gershon, I thank you again for coming on as well.
Thanks for having me.
And we will talk to you all very soon. That was Kevin Burkhardt, SNY Mets field reporter, NFL on Fox broadcaster, MLB on Fox broadcaster sometimes, And what a career he's had. Just like, I mean, maybe maybe me and you won't sell used cars, but we're certainly starting, from practically nothing, as Burkhardt did, and and it's great to see, and hopefully one day we'll be able to, walk around Citi Field with him one day. So for Gershon Rabinowitz, I am Brian Danoff. This has been the MLB Talk 101, sitting down with Kevin Burkhardt talking about his career and the 2014 New York Mets. Thanks for joining us tonight, and I hope to see you guys all very, very soon.